So let's talk about the basics of intonation. So what's the big deal if you don't learn about intonation and you don't master the skills? Your meaning can be lost entirely. Your true emotion may not be effectively reflected in your speech. You may also have difficulty understanding the true meaning of others, and you may end up sounding flat or uninterested. And because sometimes the words being spoken can mean the exact opposite of what the meaning is, it's kind of an important thing to understand. And we'll get some of our definitions straight. Pitch, tone, rhythm, intonation, stress, melody. What? If you're as confused as I am, it's because a lot of these terms have been used interchangeably. So let's just start with a sturdy foundation of understanding what some of these terms actually mean. The term pitch. This refers to the actual note or the frequency of someone's voice. Rhythm. Rhythm is the beat or the tick pattern of speech. Think of it like the tempo. Melody, cadence, and inflection. These terms are all used interchangeably, so you can pick or choose. Cadence refers to the rise and fall of the voice in a sequence of sounds or words. It contributes to the overall rhythm and the intonation. Stress. Stress is the emphasis of particular syllables or words in speech. For stressed words, certain syllables are emphasized or said in a way that's louder, longer, or higher pitched than the other words in the sentence. And this helps to emphasize and tell meaning and even to contrast and compare. So intonation includes variations in pitch, rhythm, and stress patterns, and the melody across phrases or sentences or speech. Intonation provides meaning beyond what the words are being said, and it is also interconnected with our body language and our facial expressions. Mirroring and shadowing are techniques that people use to improve their language skills and their speech skills. These are techniques where you repeat and listen intently and try to imitate in some way, and in all the ways you possibly can, to your goal. These techniques can be really helpful if you know what it is that you're mirroring. Now, most people are blindly mirroring, and this just means that they're listening and hoping that they're catching all of the nuances of the speech and saying what they think is about the same. The problem is that if you're blindly imitating without actually understanding the rules and the very specific elements that you're trying to imitate, you end up getting quite confused, and ultimately, you won't notice those significant changes because you're not entirely sure what's different. I will be telling you exactly what to focus on, and that is why your mirroring and shadowing techniques are going to work amazingly. Intonation is that music, the highs and lows of our speech when we're talking. And we need to understand that there are natural differences in our speech. And the differences can come about because of our gender, can come about because of our age, and it can come about by social preferences and just basically sounding the way that we like. So we have specific preferences for ourselves. And so you might find that some people might use a lot more higher pitched tones or use a lot more energy and excitement than another person. But although there are differences for these characteristics, there are some universal rules of intonation and stress that are unchanging. And incorrect patterns of these very stable rules can cause a lot of miscommunications, both when you're speaking, if you're not using those rules, and also when you're not understanding the rules of intonation when others are speaking. So you may miss the meaning altogether. The result is that you also may sound a bit more monotone or less enthusiastic than you really mean to sound.
In an effort to alleviate the effects of the Anyone?
All statements in English use a falling intonation. From the point of your focus word of stress, everything after will start to fall. If the final word of a statement is the stressed word, you'll notice this perception of a high, but what you might not realize is that there's actually a wave, a high-low. So be aware that it's a high-low that's still a falling intonation because it ends in a low. Let's take a look at an example of a sentence with multiple content words. I said bye to my friend, but before grabbing my coat, I accidentally stubbed my toe and fell to the ground. So let's practice falling intonation for statements. It's up to you which word you choose as your primary focus of meaning. But in this case, I want you to really listen to the low downward intonation at the end. Hello. Good morning. How nice of you. It was nice to see you yesterday. I'm on my computer. My cat always greets me at the door when I come home. Notice here I chose cat. I could have chosen door. My cat always greets me at the door when I come home. Or home. My cat always greets me at the door when I come home. The meaning indicates which word to stress. For commands, you'll notice that it's typically a very slow falling intonation, meaning usually we start with the highest pitch or the focus is at the beginning and a slow downward for the rest of the words. Typically, but not always the case. Take a look. Silence your phones during the meeting. Turn off the lights when you're done. Clean your room before you go out. Follow the instructions carefully. Hand in your assignment by Friday. Falling intonation with WH questions. In American English, words that start with who, what, when, where, why, and also how, which is not a WH question, but don't get me there, these are all going to be using, generally, a falling intonation. And the waterfall effect of intonation will happen after that primary stress. Let's practice together with some WH questions. How are you? How are you? What's your name? What's the weather like? What do you do for a living? Where are you from? What's your favorite type of music? I said that WH questions are typically a falling intonation. Now I said typically, so let's look at some examples of when a WH question might not be used with a falling intonation. If you hear a rising intonation with a WH question, it means something different. When you hear that rising intonation, the person is actually asking you to repeat yourself or to clarify. It can also possibly indicate shock or even disbelief. Let's look at some examples of a rising intonation with a WH question and see how the meaning is very different than the question itself. How old are you? is very different than how old are you? How old are you is a basic question. It's the expected intonation, that downward intonation. If I'm saying, how old are you? That is me saying, I'm surprised by how old you are. Maybe you look fantastic for your age. Or I don't believe you. I kind of want you to either repeat it or clarify and confirm. It's a much different meaning. Listen to the difference. Where are you from? Where are you from? That is the expected intonation. That's a real question. I want to know, where are you from? If I use a rising intonation, where are you from? That indicates that I either don't believe you or I'm shocked in some way. I want you to repeat it. Maybe I heard it wrong and I really want it to be clarified. What's your favorite type of music? Music. That's a downward intonation or falling intonation. It's what you expect. I really want to know what music you like. Versus, what's your favorite type of music? And I mean, facial expressions do tell you a lot, but that upward intonation is telling you that I'm either shocked, I'm in disbelief, I want you to clarify. It has an entirely different meaning. So I'm hoping that's clarifying for you, and it explains when to use a falling intonation or a rising intonation for questions that start with the WH words. Rising intonation is when the pitch of your voice goes up at the end. Typically, we will go low to really high. It might be just a slide all the way up, or it might be flat, low to high. That sounded weird, but you get the point, I think. Let's take a look at rising intonation and when we would use this. I want you to think of rising intonation as the first part of the wave. We're going up because we want an answer. We want the downward intonation of somebody else's response. So we are now doing the first part, and the answer will be, And that rising indicates incompletion. We're not complete. We haven't had the answer, so we don't have a drop. Rising intonation is used for requesting information. It's typically for yes-no questions. Consider this question. Do you want to go with me? Do you want to go with me? I went low on go, and I went super high at the end to indicate it's a question. It doesn't start with WH words. The answer will be a downward intonation. Yeah. I chose go as the super low because that is our primary focus word. So let's practice some rising intonation together. I want you to say this out loud along with me and feel the singing going high at the end. You might want to go a bit higher than typical, just to practice. Can I get you something to drink? Can you believe he did that? Can you help? Have you seen any good movies lately? Have you traveled anywhere interesting recently? Have you tried any new hobbies lately? He doesn't like ketchup? We're going to compare using the same words in English and watching how the meaning changes depending on whether you use falling intonation or rising intonation. Let's take a look. In the word O, OH, we can use a falling intonation, and that will mean it's a statement. oh, oh, high to low. We can also go low to high. Oh, that indicates a question. Practice these starting with a rising intonation, going up, then with a falling intonation, going down. Let's try it. Huh? Huh. Hmm? Say each of the following sentences or phrases in a rising intonation first, and then in a falling intonation. You finished the report on time? You finished the report on time. Al couldn't get his door open? Al couldn't get his door open. Depending on the type of question, if it's a yes-no question, or if the question is a WH question, watch for the WH words, you'll know whether to use a falling intonation or a rising intonation. And we're going to use the WH questions as the typical falling intonation. Okay, we won't use that exception example that I gave previously. What have you been up to lately? How's your family doing? Any upcoming travel or vacation plans? Great job on knowing which intonation pattern to use for these questions. Here we're going to talk about intonation while taking turns in a conversation. It's crucial to know what kind of patterns to use of intonation during turn taking in conversations in order to keep your conversations running smoothly. I have a question for you. If English is not your first language, have either of these two issues happened to you? Number one, when you're speaking, have you ever been interrupted while you're in the middle of a conversation? Or you notice that you're constantly being interrupted mid-thought? Or number two, you've finished talking and the person you're talking to is looking at you kind of expectantly, like there's more you're going to say when you're done talking. These are two very common problems for English as a second language learners because intonation patterns are the thing that's telling your listener those two pieces of information, that you're not finished or you are finished talking. If others are often interrupting you, it's likely that your intonation is not indicating to them that you have more to say. Either you're using too much of a flat intonation and nothing is indicating if you're going high or you're going low, it's all flat. Or the other very common issue is that almost everything that's being said is used with an upward intonation, and so everything kind of sounds like a question, kind of like I'm doing now. And so you never quite know if I've got more to say. Since English is a stress-timed language and an intonation language, these elements of speech really impact your meaning and therefore cannot be ignored. But that's why you're here, so let's learn all the rules.
And if you want to just keep learning with me, I'd love to see you. We'll get to the next lesson because this is where we're going to learn even more amazing North American English secrets. So check this video out, and I'll see you there. Bye.